Did you know there was once a thriving market for buying and selling the life insurance policies of people with terminal diseases like AIDS? And that when better AIDS drugs came on the market, the bottom fell out of that investment and it made some investors really angry? It's pretty unsettling, isn't it? That is one of the many fascinating bits surfaced and examined in the book What Money Can't Buy by Michael J. Sandel. Regular followers of this channel should know that I touch on economics as a recurring subject of deep research for writing science fiction and fantasy. And while looking for books on that topic for this channel, I've been trying to find stuff that isn't, for instance, the kind of superficial gotcha counterintuition treatment of the subject that you'd get from places like Freakonomics. And this book stood out for having a genuinely interesting and thought-provoking premise, which is followed up on in a genuinely interesting and thought-provoking way. It's also not very long. It's very readable. It doesn't require any particular background in economics. And its biggest drawback is that because of its brevity, it might come off as a little like an extended prelude towards a longer work. But that makes it that much more relatable, I think, that much more valuable because that makes it an easier read. And the central question of the book is, are we moving from a market economy to a market society? What are the costs of allowing market forces to permeate our culture? What do we lose when we assume everything is for sale? And while we might gain some things from putting everything up for sale, what losses come along to offset those gains that we can't foresee? One thing that we lose most is our ability to see how putting things up for sale changes their very nature. And it often changes them for the worse, and it often changes them in ways that are irreversible and socially disfiguring. The meanings of the things put up for sale are altered, and they're also altered in ways we can't always predict. And they don't just cheapen the moral dimensions of things. They don't just make what used to be a moral or public good into a mere commodity. They have second and third order effects which are often invisible or at the very least hard to predict and account for. One common theme throughout the book is the way the introduction of market forces into some scenario act in counterintuitive ways. Again, because the meaning of the thing has changed. And many of these counterintuitive behaviors involve things we assume would act like incentives. One big example, which is cited a number of times in the book, is a daycare center where parents were sometimes showing up late to claim their children. And this became a problem for the staff because they often had to wait after hours for some time for parents to show up. The proposed solution was to fine parents who showed up late. And you would think that this would give parents incentive to arrive on time. Instead, the opposite thing happened. More parents showed up late, not fewer. Now, why was that? It was because they got into the mindset that paying the fine was a way for them to pay the staff to babysit their kids longer. Even if the staff didn't actually get the money as overtime pay, even if that was not the intention of levying the fine, that's how the payers, the parents, interpreted it. Many other backfiring incentives like this get analyzed in the book, and I like the way that the analyses don't amount to just waggling fingers or getting judgmental. The book is not an exercise in indignation. It's about laying out a case that economic incentives don't operate the way we expect, and they change the significances of the things we're trying to incentivize. We are very right to be uneasy about putting tangible price tags on everything, because then things that aren't supposed to have price tags in the first place get turned into commodities. And there isn't really a price tag that can be put on having a functional public sphere, for instance. And when we lose that, as we seem to be right now, it's not something that we can buy back. So we have to fight to keep it from being priced into and then back out of existence. And a big part of why I found myself enjoying this book as research for science fiction and fantasy, one obvious angle is that it's really good research for if you're brewing up a cyberpunk or another kind of hyper-capitalist setting. And there have long been cautionary tales in science fiction, not just cyberpunk, but SF generally, about the warping effects of money on human existence. And the sick part is how reality is now catching up with a vengeance. One of my favorite examples of this comes from Philip K. Dick's book Ubik, about a man who lives in an apartment with a front door that costs him 5 cents every time he wants to open it. But some of the stuff that I've outlined above makes that look almost innocent in comparison. I don't think a cyberpunk setting I've seen had the morbid idea of turning the life insurance policies of terminally ill people into a short-term investment vehicle. But I also thought about how fantasy works, too, can benefit from some of this thinking. Imagine a fantasy setting that revolves around the way economics changes the world in some key fashion. The merchant class was instrumental in transforming feudal society and into moving it into the world that we know today. And the exact details of that are worth unpacking and applying, both good and bad. So if you're working on a story about the transition from a pre-modern to a modern or even postmodern setting with money as one of the drivers, then insights like the ones offered in this book are really powerful to have. So once again, the book is What Money Can't Buy by Michael J. Sandel. It is available in paper or in digital editions. It's a very quick read. You should be able to get through it in just a couple of sittings. I strongly recommend it for anybody curious about the way money changes everything, especially in a science fiction or fantasy setting. See what you think.